listeners, before we dive into today's episode, just letting you know, this was a live stream I recorded in the Flipchart Facebook group. And I was thinking about, should I edit things out or should I let it go? And what I've done is I've just trimmed the beginning and the end of it, but I haven't edited the live stream. And the reason I haven't edited it is because you might want to do a live stream one day and you're curious, how does it work? How much interaction should you have? I'm not the expert here, but I wanted to share how I engage with people, how I tried to keep things on track, yet also responding to questions and comments that were coming through on the chat. So hopefully you find it helpful from a meta perspective and what live streaming might look like for you, and the content as well. I hope you find that applicable in your facilitation world. Enjoy the episode. Today's episode is an extract from a Virtually Possible 2.0 session that I was in with Marissa and Joeri. Marissa was running a session called Activate Your Attention, How to Prime Your Natural Listening and Observation Skills for Meaningful and Rich Conversations. What we did was such a cool idea for an activity for the virtual world, using the concept of fishbowls. And the focus of the conversation was the craft of facilitation. So I thought it would be useful for you to listen to for both those reasons. One, listen to the activity and consider how you could use it for your session. Marissa describes what we do and then we dive into actually doing it. And number two, Marissa and I reflect on 5 amazing facilitation questions that she created while my virtually possible partner in crime, Joeri Schilders, patiently listens and takes notes. It's part of the Fishbowl experience. Marissa Agrasut is based in Singapore and is a practitioner, facilitator, and enabler. For the last 18 years, she's been working with teams, helping them understand, apply, and leverage tools, frameworks, and methodologies to optimize value creation. From consulting to co-creating, working with Fortune 500 companies to national ministries and non or not just for profits. During the 2009 Asian economic crisis, Marissa embarked on her first people, planet, profit business model venture. In 2016, she co-founded the Inceptory, working at the edge of conventional boundaries and assumptions, challenging notions of success in our current paradigm, helping future-oriented companies embed and further the business resilience imperative to their organizations. She's a graduate in strategic design management and harbors a lifetime fascination with the limitless power. Like I said, Joeri was also on the call, Joeri the Magic Source. Now, after having lived abroad, the US, the UK, China, and now Singapore for almost half his life, he's fluent in Mandarin, owns over 100 sunglasses, and loves bringing his cats, Baz and Bex, into his creative videos. I hope you enjoy this one. I hope you get some inspiration from it. Now, onto the show.
So today, what I was actually going to do was a fishbowl. I don't know if you know what a fishbowl is. Have you heard of it?
As in fishbowl facilitation?
Yeah, it's a kind of a technique.
Fishbowl facilitation, I learned, is basically where a group of people do something in the middle and the rest observe. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
But obviously not within the physical space. The idea was to try and bring it online. A lot of the times, I think I'm a good listener. Actually, I have a very poor memory. I think I'm really good at listening. And so the idea was to try and bring that listening online. A lot of the times it's really easy to tune out because you can look at your other screen, messages come through and nobody can really see, right? You can, to all intents and purposes, look like you're still there. And so what I thought would be a good idea was to try something like a fishbowl, but online. Instead of having a physical space, we would just divide the group into 2, where you have one set of observers and one set of speakers or players or whatever you want to call them. And I'd prepared some questions and topics that I thought were quite controversial. Because normally you would do this in an organization where there's something critical that they want to talk about, where perhaps there's tension, where there are really different opinions, where people can't find alignment. And so instead of sort of doing that, because we don't have a group of people all necessarily trying to solve one issue together where there's different perspectives, I chose and prepared some questions on topics that I thought were interesting and dear to some of us, or probably all of us, where we would divide the group and then have one group who would talk about it. So you divide into 2, some talk and some listen, and then basically spend, say, 5 or 10 minutes with my questions. So the first group sits and I start asking the questions and they start talking and discussing in their group. The other observers just sit and listen for the 5 minutes, right? They don't interrupt.
Cool. And I just interrupted because I'm just thinking of the flow, like what this looks like, because I want to make sure I'm picturing it right.
Yeah.
So are we all, so imagine we have 12 people. Are we all on like a screen like this, right? So we have the little boxes. I'm trying to picture what it looks like. on Zoom, for instance.
Yeah.
And then you say, whatever, these 6 people, the people with the shortest hair are observers, people with the longest hair are going to be discussing. You pose a question to the group, microphones on, and they discuss that there. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. So those people within the kind of players or speakers group would be discussing. The other, say 6, would kind of mute their microphones and then just sit and listen. And then we'd have a sheet or a piece of paper where you take points. So you would kind of take away the points from the discussion through your active listening. And then you'd also, though, not just sort of remember the points, but have the evidence. So why you came to that point, or why you understood that point from the discussion. And for the entire sort of like 5 or 10 minutes where you were listening, that's all you would do. Just sit and listen. And I think a lot of the times we are waiting to speak. We are sitting there listening, waiting for ourselves to make the point that we want to make in relation to what the other person has said. So this is like an exercise in trying to harness and practice those skills, cultivate those skills of listening, proper listening, active listening. And then you have the evidence. The second round may be the same topic, or probably a different topic if you're not the same group, as in all from the same organization. And then you do the same exercise. So the people who were first speaking become the observers or the listeners, and the people who are the observers and listeners then become the people who are discussing through the questions. And then after that, we come together and then share back, your understanding of people's points and why you thought that, and sort of share the evidence around that. And then the other group will do the same. And then the idea is that you kind of share your experiences of listening and how you understood their perspectives, rather than this is what I think, because often I think that's the value we bring as facilitators. Inherently, we also, as well as facilitating, feel like we have a unique perspective to add to that, or we're there to challenge some of the thinking, which isn't sort of in itself wrong or bad, but this is to practice listening as a facilitator, but also in groups where there is sort of disharmony, or people get kind of triggered when talking at the same time, and everyone's riled up and wants to kind of speak to make their point at the time someone else is making their point.
Cool. So what kind of question would you have? Because let's just make this real, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. So Leanne and I are in a group. Imagine there's more people.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss a question, because I'm just trying to see like technically what it looks like. So imagine that we're a group. So you pose a question, I assume.
But okay, so I'll have to pose a question and be a speaker because one of us will have to be the observer. Does that make sense?
I'll be the observer then.
Oh, okay, hold on. So
and you, Leanne, are speaking.
Okay, so I've got a sheet here. Hold on, here. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, here we go.
Can I take notes, by the way? Is that allowed?
You can. So hold on. So these are the questions. Can you see the questions?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about this, and I'll read them out. But this is a sheet that people would have, or at least create. So everyone's got this sheet, and they'll be taking notes, either kind of, hopefully not typing, because that doesn't really allow for listening, but pre-session they either create this sheet, or we can set or post-it notes, any kind of note-taking material. So you write each point in there, and then you write the evidence of what you heard, just to link it back. Otherwise, it's just a random point floating in the air. And everyone gets one of these sheets. And then Leanne and I would start discussing whichever the topic was. So in this case, the topic's facilitators. So the question is, how do you normally describe yourself? So there's a discussion between Leanne and I. So I say to Leanne, well, I describe myself as sort of a consultant, a facilitator. How about you, Leanne? What about you?
Yeah, I usually start with podcast host first, which is funny, actually, now that you say that. Yeah, facilitator, speaker, corporate trainer as well.
And does that vary? Depends. So it's just like a conversation, right? So ongoing.
Yeah.
Does that vary who you
Keep talking, Leanne. Like, give me something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easier if there's a big group, right? Because there's often an emotional topic that's buried in work.
Yeah. And so I think you were going to ask me, does that vary? Absolutely. It depends on, because some people, like if I'm at an event and people aren't from our world, they're like, what do you do? So what I usually start off with is, how you go to those corporate training workshops and they're usually pretty boring. And they're like, yeah. So I always start with the problem when it's with people that don't know what we do. I go, well, I'm the type of person that I love running engaging workshops, and I teach other people how to do that.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, then the next question then is of what value, like, do you describe you bring, right? Exactly. You've just said it in a sentence is, the boring workshops, I make them fun. But some people they think they're consultants and they add some kind of domain knowledge perhaps to a process, which is perhaps what I would say, right? Or I would say I do it, but I also like to add fun in it and make it exciting and engaging and not just a one-way flow of information, right? So that people are actively learning and listening and things like that. But I think, I don't know, do you think that's a worthwhile skill? I mean,
well, it's actually funny. A friend of mine, this is kind of related. What you said actually just spurred this on. The question number 2 is, so she's working internally and she wants to start her own consulting business. And so she's working on her value proposition, which is the answer to number 2. And she messaged me today. She's like, it's actually easier doing the work than communicating the value that I bring. It's so hard. But that value proposition is like, what value? And I don't know, like, because we can describe like what we do is super easy. Like, this is what I do. Like,
because it comes quite naturally, right? And so it doesn't feel like hard work.
Value. Oh, that's when I'm still like refining it. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely something that's hardest. Like for the longest time, what do you do? First, it's describing what you do and having them understand it. Then the value that you bring, and then I think that ultimately, for me, leads to like a question of like, is what we do a specialized skill, right? Because then, how do you differentiate yourself? So I was like, how do you differentiate yourself?
Is what we do a specialized skill. You know what it is, but I wish it wasn't. I wish that everyone had the skills of facilitation, because we're doing it all the time. It's just not called that. So the second you have 2 or 3 more people like around you and you're talking about something or trying to make a decision, you're in facilitation mode. And a lot of people don't recognize that. And I wish they would, because it is, once you know that there's tools and models to help you drive an outcome, it's like Harry Potter. There's muggles that have no idea that wizardry is around. It's like the wizardry skill, but everyone's a muggle. That's how I describe it. So I think it is specialized, but I don't think it's a tough skill to learn. It's more about being open to the ideas of it. Yeah. What do you say, Marissa?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled with this for a long time. I think that, sometimes, like you said, it's probably something that comes naturally to a lot of people. And it's not necessarily that they have the frameworks, or you could use any framework almost, as long as you're familiar with it. Or, I mean, I see all these frameworks and tools as just tools, right? As in, you could mash them together depending on what you need. If you were a carpenter, you wouldn't just use a saw, right? You would use a chisel and a hammer. And so that's how I kind of these things. And I do think it's not specialized, but I think it can be learned. Whether or not you can learn it and deliver it well, I think is a different matter, but definitely, everyone can be given the tools to do that. And then how you then use them is another aspect. But then that's where the sort of value, I think for me, the tension between like the value you bring versus like, is it a skill? Is there like a magic sauce that you add to it?
I think you're absolutely right. They're aligned. And when it comes to specialist skills, when you know what tool to bring into what scenario based on the experience and everything. Like, so when I was a first time facilitator, there's all these things that I did not know that I know now, that it's so obvious that I'd bring that into that context or environment or situation. But that only came with the experience. That's what makes it a specialist skill now, rather than just picking up a model and throwing the model at something else. I see the speed at which you can do that in the moment, and just to solve problems, I think creates the speciality.
And the next question is, should we be licensed or held to an ethical code?
This came up yesterday stream.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, that's okay. I'll throw it to you.
I think there should be some guidelines. It's a bit like social media to me, right? You're in a position of, I wouldn't say power in that sense, but influence, and to a degree of power. And I think that we are either directly, indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally kind of influencing the space that we're in. Even if we don't actually provide sort of specific materials, we are guiding a process, and that can, I think, determine to a certain extent the outcome. So in that sense, I think there's some kind of ethical or moral responsibility. I don't know how far you would take it, but I think it's something that any professional should think about, because we don't always bring those conversations into business or into certain contexts. So in a way, yes, I don't know what that looks like, but I think there's some kind of professional ethics that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, it came up yesterday with the analogy was like, how doctors have the Hippocratic
oath.
Yeah. And that just sort of, it's like a framework that you sort of play to. Actually, I remember when I interviewed Michael Bunker, Joeri knows I talk about him all the time. In our interview, I was part of this leadership program. I had to deliver an off-the-shelf thing. So when you deliver someone else's content, it was in the program, so I did it. And it was Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It was like the first 3 hours, you're just getting everyone together, and then you're doing that, why do you do what you do? I remember sharing that and it really caused, like in the workshops, people were like scratching their heads. These are people, construction companies, about 50 years old. They've never actually stopped to think about why they do what they do. And Michael said it best. He goes, that's a really destabilizing question. It really is. Like if you've just met these people and they've got to answer why they do what they do. Like, and so when I think about that and standards, I don't see that a lot in terms of, I hated doing that part because it was destabilizing. So I think I'd love to see something like that, like an oath, or we can just refer to push back to clients.
I think exactly. And I think when you're doing any kind of change management training, it's a bit like marriage counseling, but on a much bigger scale and a much more complex scale. And I think often we're not given, I mean, even as facilitators, even as good as we are, unless we kind of have those specific frameworks and tools, then actually it's quite hard to do that work because it's a lot of human emotion and psychology.
Big time.
And you're digging, you're literally digging, you're starting to opening the cupboards and turning the lights on, and you're saying, wow, what do you think of this? What's all this stuff that you've accumulated over the years, and what are all these issues that you're working through? And you're challenging their existence, right? You're questioning existence.
Yeah. Well, even like the word delegation, like you talk about the hack to delegation, but delegation's a really deep-seated issue. It's got a lot to do with trust, that no one can do it better than I can. All that, so that is deep rooted into someone's like belief system, value system, the way they've been brought up. And then you're going, yes, delegation, and why it doesn't work is because everyone just approaches it at that level. But then to go at a deeper level, there absolutely needs to be something ethical around that. Yeah,
thanks. I agree.
Joeri, you've been doing a great job listening. If this was me listening, I would want to jump in. They're great questions.
And then the last question, what do you think could be done to improve our professional practice?
That's why I started the podcast. It's why I started the podcast, because the brand of meetings is so bad around the world. So my response to that was, instead of partnering with someone official, just starting my own thing and trying to drive that through finding out what's going on in the workshops that's great in the world and sharing that. So I think I'm sort of trying to do that. That's my little contribution to improving the practice of facilitation.
Yeah.
How about yourself? What do you think?
I'm going to stop sharing. I think there are a lot of things. I think what you guys are doing is really good. And I think it's something, as I said, I think everyone's sort of okay to accept substandard, boring, disengaging online sessions. And I think as we've evolved as human beings, our capacity to sit and listen and engage changes, right? It requires different things. It requires a different level of interaction. It requires a different type of, I guess, skill. And I don't think we have that. We're not taught that. And nobody really talks about it. They just kind of assume that it's effective and interesting to keep going like that. And after a while, I don't think I can even remember what the kind of session is about a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I think all the stuff that you guys are doing is really good. So yeah, all the skills, all the sharings really help with that. And bringing out all the stuff that probably a lot of us are thinking in those sessions, but just like sitting there sort of bursting and wanting to kind of like, so I think that's kind of, that's how I think of it. So that's our discussion. Joeri, I think you've done really well because you're normally quite chatty. Not that that's a judgment.
You're on mute, Joeri.
No, he's not. So now what would normally happen is obviously we'd go either on another topic, or if it's the same topic that was dear to Joeri's heart, then he would have a discussion. And then
you kind
well,
of
we would normally you wouldn't normally we could normally do it, but because normally it's the same topic. If it's an organization talking about their perspectives on the same thing, it gives the two groups a chance to speak, without people responding straight away. And I think often people need to respond immediately because they don't feel heard, right, in those situations. But I think when everyone just holds on to what they need to say, then they get to hear the other side. And sometimes through listening to what the other side has to say, some of those things diminish or dissolve without the back and forth, right? You just hear, you're present to that, and then you don't actually need so much. You start to process through that. So that's how it would normally run. That both.
So I can't share back my insights. I've got like.
Well, no, you can. You can. No, you can now, because we're not going to do that because there's only three of us. Go for it. What would you like to start? How did you? What did you notice first?
I'm just trying to understand. So we've just done this discussion. You've had a conversation. I've taken notes because you've given people some time to take notes, right? Then what do you do with that? Do you just kind of go share back a couple? Do you go one by one? Like, what is the structure for sharing that back?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the size of the group and obviously how much time is assigned to it. I think personally, it's good because if you do it in too structured a way, sometimes people are forced to say things when they're not ready to say, right? I think that's part of this is trying to give people the space that they need to kind of process and share back. I would, if it was me, I would sort of hope that somebody, as we talked about in your guys' program, hope that somebody shares first, but be ready to kind of ask somebody specific to share back first. So maybe someone who's maybe not so vocal some of the time, or somebody who seems like they may have that. But I think a lot of those underlying dynamics, if you're in an organization or you've been working with them, you would probably know where those issues lie, right? You'd have a sense of it. But sometimes obviously you just have to go with what you can sense with the rest of the people.
Cool. Well, a couple of things that we could do here to make sure that people start speaking is things like go in alphabetical order of their names, go from shortest hair to longest hair, go from shirts from lightest to darkest. I'm just, for people watching this video later on, there's a couple of things you could do to just get the ball rolling. The talking bear, as in I've got mine, I've finished mine, I'm going to hand it to Leanne to speak next. Something like that usually works. You could go for all who wants to go first. I've noticed that in a virtual session that takes even longer than physically, right? I think people miss out on a physical energy of people. Sometimes when it's your time to speak. Anyway, so you could kick that off. But what would you then ask? So you kind of go, what did you guys observe? Or do you ask for insight? What do you ask? What's the question then?
I'll probably firstly ask how people felt about the exercise. That's because, I mean, for people who've never done it, it might come naturally to some people. Some people are natural listeners and really good at kind of holding that. Some people have natural kind of, I want to share. And I think, I'm really eager to kind of get other people rolling as well. I'd ask people how they felt about that kind of their position as the observer, and then how do they feel obviously as the player or the speaker.
Cool. As an observer, I thought it was very interesting because it's like the longest I've ever not talked my entire life in 43 years. So it was an interesting experience to me.
What I'd say, and I reckon to even make the dynamic of observer and participant even more dramatic, I would put Joeri's video off. So it feels like he's not even with us.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. So all the observers turn off their videos because they're still there and they have to take notes, right? Because they've got to report back.
Yeah, and they can see, right?
Create some contrast with who's in and who's out. Because like even I was moderating, I don't know if I was intentionally aware of moderating things along the line because I could see him nodding or agreeing, and then I point up. Whereas if you haven't got that feedback loop.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a really good idea. Actually, I was going to start the session, had there been more of us, with just all turning our videos off and mics off and just sitting, kind of like not meditation, but kind of like a mindful space for 30 seconds. Yeah. Just to get into that space of I'm ready to listen, because I mean, I'm highly easily stimulated by I can your backgrounds, as we did, and kind of I think we open that space like that, but I don't think we have to stay in the space for the duration of that, at least when we're getting into the listening mode. So I was going to start with that, but there's just three of us, so I thought, well, we're just chit-chatting anyway.
No, that's fine, because I think we get it, right? I think when people, even when they watch this video, I think they get what the picture you're painting. And what's nice about what we're kind of riffing off here is that, like I said, the original activity is from a guy called Roger Greenaway or something. It's like 1970s. Basically, a lot of the leadership, team models, change management, all this kind of training-esque activities come from him. He's like one of the founding fathers of all these different
I didn't know
types.
that, yeah.
Maybe he just coined the names. I don't know. But Fishbowl... We'll look him up.
Put him on the podcast.
Roger, if you're watching this, I hope you are. But my point is, the whole fishbowl facilitation came from the principle that certain people are in a fishbowl, and in the physical setting, you'd have people sitting in the middle doing something, talking and stuff, and then other people sit around it. So, Leanne, to your point, by turning off the camera and even muting your mic, just in case you get any noise, that is probably conducive of that activity. Exactly, because I think you'll be less distracted.
1 minute, sorry, somebody's at my door with a delivery.
Well, go for it. Get it. It's fine.
Sorry.
Go collect.
Don't be sorry.
Sorry.
I do this all the time.
Okay, just leave it there. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry, I was listening.
No, don't be sorry. This happens all the time. I was like, oh, sorry, my cat just walked in. Yeah,
but that's acceptable. Somebody's asking for a response. I can just ignore the cat normally. Just shove them off the table.
Yeah, hello, we have a package for you. So my point is, I think it's really conducive for this activity by doing exactly that, by turning off those cameras. I think then the listeners will not be so aware because they'll be looking at their own screen, kind of going,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, my hair like this." I think that will be super conducive of this activity. And I really like the fact you start off with maybe just a listening activity. I think that in general might be a really nice way to start, like, all turn off your cameras and maybe play a couple of sounds or something and then say, what did you hear? Just to tune people into really listening or something. I like that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a lot you can do with this kind of activity.
Good.
Can I share back some of my insights now?
Yeah,
Things
please
I've
do.
noticed. Okay, I've got so many, so I'm just going to do
Wait,
a
but
couple.
no sort of comments on our sort of us as people, right?
No, or do you want me as you as cats or something? What would you rather have? So one thing I've noticed in both of you, which is really interesting, both of you use, particularly when it comes to ideation, looking to the future and sharing ideas, you both get very metaphorical. So Leanne talks a lot about, I don't know what the hell a muggle is, but something about Harry Potter. Then Marissa, you said something about marriage counseling, and you talked about kind of a carpenter using a chisel and a saw. The moment both of you start getting excited about ideas, you use more metaphors. And there's actually a whole book, and I forgot what the book is called, but I'll find it at some point, which explains why that is. Basically, once people start talking in metaphors, there's a lot going on. There's like more emotion going on behind it.
Interesting.
So you both you do that interestingly. Leanne, once Leanne starts talking about ideas, her hands come into the screen more. You start pointing at things more. And the moment we talk about something you don't like or you're not that excited about, your hands get out of the screen and you look down more. Right, so your eyes kind of move down. So
We'll play back the video and you'll be like watching yourself.
Go look back at it. Really, every time you do that. So you light up at ideas with everything. Like you literally go up and you move your hands. And the moment when it comes to, let's say, limitations or something that we shouldn't do, or in the past that did this and that didn't really work, it does exactly the opposite. And I've got one more on Marissa. Marissa, you nod a lot. So you literally are looking at your screen. And based on from what I can see here, you're really listening. So unless you hide your, kind of Instagram very well on the side, it really feels that you're listening. And my guess is whenever Leanne's talking and vice versa, you feel that you're really listening to each other. I think that's what it felt like.
Yes, and as you can see, Leanne and I both nodding at you.
Definitely.
So those are some observations. And now what you do? Then you switch, you wrap it up.
I mean, like I said, we would have swapped to have the other group talk and listen and bring observations. But if we were talking about something that was important to the group, then obviously we kind of unpack that more through the discussions that we have as a group. And I think when there's the space, people are given the space to talk and express the entirety of perhaps their idea or their issues, then there's supposed to be a lot more that you can kind of work on, rather than it coming to loggerheads and then people kind of getting stuck at certain points or disagreeing at certain points, because you hear more of everything. It's a bit like reading, right? For me, if I want to get the idea, I'll scan through everything first and then go back where I got stuck. Whereas some people, which is quite a traditional way of learning, is that they'll read, and as soon as they get stuck, they'll stop there and then they just get stuck at that point and they never kind of move forward. Whereas I think, is that how you work?
I used to, yeah.
Okay.
I used to feel like that. Like writing, I would literally start from top left and write everything perfectly.
No.
I like write the end before I start the beginning.
Yeah,
that's
right.
what I do now. That's just good practice. But as growing up, I never did that.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of how it helps as well, that you get to hear sort of like the bigger picture instead of getting caught up on the details and then never moving beyond that. And I think even with innovation, right, they say to get everything out first and then go and refine, rather than getting everything perfect and getting stuck at the beginning, because then you also have no energy left to move. You've used all your energy at the places where you got stuck at the start, and then by the time you need to get to the end, you're probably like, I'm just quite tired by now.
I used to always lose points on writing essays because we'd have to write it with a pencil first, kind of your draft. And then once you had that ready, you had to then copy with a ballpoint pen. And that's the copy you could hand in. And because I would be overthinking my writing with every word and every line, it would be grammatically perfect and you name it. I would always lose like 2 points just because I would hand in my draft with pencil, and the whole thing is you lose a point or 2 points just by handing in a draft, things like that. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, there's a good Malcolm Gladwell podcast on this, Revisionist History. He talks about the LSAT exam. It's really time-based. And he was talking about how some of the best lawyers are the ones that don't do well on the LSAT, but they take their time because all the LSAT does is it's a really quick test, answer these really complex questions in 25 minutes. And yeah, it's really interesting, actually, just talking about timing and everything else.
What's that book? Is it a book?
Podcast. I should put the link
Okay.
where we shared the video.
Revisionist history.
Yeah, but talking of podcasts, Marissa, I know Joeri's up for anything, but you, Marissa, how would you feel if this was released as a podcast on First Time Facilitator, what we just did?
Like, what you mean, the audio version, or you mean doing it again?
Yes, that's a podcast.
Yeah, just like releasing just the audio. I think people would love.
Do you find it interesting? If people do find it interesting,
I think they'd find it very interesting. I think they'd find it very interesting. It's such a cool model.
Like, I just think of all the different applications for doing something like.
Same.
I think it's amazing. You've done. Thank you for bringing this to us and the world now.
Well, thanks. I mean, thanks for showing up. I think it wasn't something we'd sort of planned. I hadn't sort of advertised it. I said to you, I was like, I don't know. But yeah, I'm happy to if it's easier. And I think it's one of those things that I think a lot of people have experienced in a physical workshop, right? Or in some settings where there are such discussions. And I think the term Fishbowl is quite well sort of used for these. But I'm not sure that many people have done it on a sort of digital or in a workshop space when it's online. So yeah, if that's interesting, definitely.
Yeah, I'm already thinking of the episode title.
Yeah, and I think what is nice about this one is, and I think Leanne would agree, is we can quickly, and whoever's watching this or listening to this, you can see the application of this in many other places. You've just given us one way to do it. I can already see like reshuffling it a bit. So for instance, as I was asking before, like, what is the order? Like, do you discuss group 1 and group 2 and then you do all the share? I was thinking
that's a better way to do it.
If I were to do it, well, I was actually thinking the opposite, and I'll tell you why.
Right, okay,
so I would do one round. So let's say you've guys been talking. I now would have gone and shared some of my insights. And the reason I would do that first is because you then as a facilitator can elicit some of the answers, because it might be so that they didn't do it right. They didn't think through the insights. So that might have been really superficial. And you could go a little bit deeper, kind of go, so what do you think what that means? And what have you noticed? And by doing that in the first round, you're giving the second group an example of what success looks like, which will then make it a bit easier for them to go, oh, I see what they're looking for. I see what we're doing.
Yeah, so you get to learn off the first group in a way.
Again, it's not the right way. I'm just thinking that there's different ways you could run it. And it's really exciting. I like it a lot.
Cool. Yeah, no, thanks for the input. It's always good because when you're sort of experimenting, you can never see it for the first time, right? When you're kind of trying it out online versus when you get other people to experience it and their inputs on it and their kind of take on how they think it would work well or where they could improve it. So I think, yeah.
And you've just given me an idea for a video. I'm going to do a video this weekend for the magic sauce for a creative video, because this could be an energizer. And I'll tell you what the energizer is. Black screen, right? Just black screen with some kind of visual rendering. And it's a game. It's a little energizer. And we're going to play you a couple of sounds without writing anything down. Can you recognize the sounds? You'll hear 12 different...
like birds or something. Yep.
Or drill, whatever it is. You have to really focus with some noise in the background. Can you spot all the 12 sounds?
I think that's a really good exercise.
And you can land that in either just a bit of fun. You're listening.
You could split that by topic as well. So let's just say you're doing a presentation skills workshop. You could get like the 10 best speeches ever, like Martin Luther King, Churchill, epic quotes, even from movies.
So imagine you work with a team of 10 people. You just have a recorded their voice, take snippets. So who said this?
You said Churchill and then you've got Marissa. So like,
easy
you know what
to
I mean?
spot.
That would be so awesome.
Churchill sounds drunk. That's the difference.
Does he?
Hello, he's always a bit...
I thought I'd stop the podcast there. That was a good point to hit. So after that, Marissa, you and I were just talking and having a great time. I hope you picked that up in the conversation. It was really fun. Thanks to Marissa for sharing that. Thanks for Joeri for being a participant as well and for observing. I hope you found that really useful.